10 years ago, a boy found himself locked in a grimy prison with other children, none of them knowing where they were or why they'd been taken. One day, a rough-looking man named Pierre walked in, pointed at him, and said he was coming with him. Pierre wasn't the kind of guy you'd trust with your lunch money, let alone your life. He'd do anything for a profit. The boy had been living quietly with his mother, just the two of them, until Pierre tore him away to be his slave. Pierre handed him over to an injured woman and barked an order to clean him up. As she scrubbed him down, he stared at the water, wondering what terrible fate awaited him. Soon, he was presented to a wealthy woman who inspected him like she was shopping for a new handbag. "We'll see how he does," she said dismissively. Pierre grinned and assured her he was a good boy who wouldn't cause trouble, then leaned down to whisper in the boy's ear that this lady was a prized customer, so he'd better behave. And just like that, the boy found himself working at a place called Pub Wickney. It wasn't exactly a dream job. The customers enjoyed tormenting him for sport, and even the smallest mistake earned him a beating so brutal he could barely stand afterward. Pierre, never one to miss a chance for cruelty, would sometimes beat him just because it was a slow day. Despite the relentless abuse, the boy refused to break. He gritted his teeth and kept going, clinging to the hope that one day he'd escape. After a decade of misery, he finally decided he couldn't endure another minute in that hellhole. So, he came up with a plan. Charm his way out. He started flattering the customers, using his wit and charisma to turn them into unwitting accomplices. One night, a woman confessed how much she wished she could take him away. He grabbed her hand, looked her in the eye, and whispered, "You're the only light in this miserable place." She melted like butter on hot toast, hugging him and promising she couldn't live without him. Others fell for his act too, offering to help him escape. They sent carriages to whisk him away, hired mercenaries to sneak him out, and even tried bribing Pierre with absurd amounts of money. But Pierre, being the greedy sadist he was, refused every offer. "He's too valuable," he'd say, laughing like a man who'd just won the lottery. Every escape attempt failed. Those who tried to steal him away ended up in trouble with the law, and Pierre always dragged him back, each time finding new, inventive ways to punish him. The boy endured burns, cuts, and unimaginable pain, yet somehow survived it all. Pierre seemed to think the boy was invincible, but the boy had other ideas. He wasn't going to let Pierre win. "I'll escape," he thought, staring into the distance with quiet determination. "Even if it's the last thing I do." 1 year later, at Beaton Manor, the day was bright, and the gardens were alive with blooming flowers. Asha stood in the kitchen when a chef asked her where she had stashed the frozen quillies. She quickly replied they were on the right side of the second shelf in the third freezer, and even stopped him before he grabbed the wrong sack. Just as she was about to return to her work, the kitchen bell rang. A senior chef reminded her that Lord Benjamin needed to try the appetizer made with ice quillies. Apparently, if he didn't, Dawson would be in a mood. Asha was tasked with ensuring he tasted it, so she wasted no time heading to his room. At the door, she bowed to the guard before entering. Inside, she opened the dish for Lord Benjamin to inspect and politely asked if he was hungry. He said no, but invited her in anyway. As she placed the dish down, she greeted him again, but he didn't respond. Thinking he might not be fully awake, she decided to wait quietly until he finished reading his book. When he noticed her standing so stiffly, he teased her, asking if she was trying to upset him. Asha froze, completely baffled, until he burst out laughing and admitted it was a line from a romance novel he wanted to test on her. Her confused look only made him laugh harder, and he asked if his delivery was that bad. Before she could answer, he grinned and said the book was excellent, then asked if she wanted to borrow it sometime. Asha politely declined, saying she was fine, but then he asked if she had finished the book he had recommended earlier. She admitted she hadn't, explaining she was a slow reader and didn't feel confident about tackling such a big book. Lord Benjamin dismissed her concerns with a smile, saying that making it even halfway through was impressive, especially since she had so much on her plate. Asha confessed she found the story captivating and the words easy to understand, but admitted she needed more time. He seemed pleased and promised to lend her another adventure story soon, which surprised her. She thanked him sincerely, marveling at how much had changed in just 6 months. When Asha had first arrived as a maid, she was inexperienced and clumsy, stumbling through her duties. But with Lord Benjamin's guidance, she adjusted quickly. She had also been completely illiterate back then, but he had taken the time to teach her to read and write. Now, reading felt like unlocking a new world with every book, and she couldn't get enough of it. Lord Benjamin's kindness amazed her. He even lent her books to fuel her newfound love for reading. She silently hoped all his recommendations would be as thrilling as The Dragon and the 5 Warriors. On her way back to the kitchen, Asha ran into Tina, who told her that Miss Leanne wanted to see her in her office. Asha felt a knot in her stomach. Miss Leanne, the housekeeper, had a reputation for her sharp tongue and harsh punishments. Just last month, she docked a maid's wages for a week over a broken plate, and another time, she forced a maid to list all her mistakes in front of the entire household. As Asha stood outside the office, she prayed silently to make it through unscathed. When Miss Leanne finally spoke, she reminded Asha to always enter her office properly and with respect. Asha apologized immediately, promising to do better. Ms. Leanne then asked if Asha lived with her mother. Asha explained that her mother was sick and staying in the hospital. The next question caught her off guard. Did she have plans to marry? Asha hesitated but answered honestly, saying she wasn't sure. Her only priority was helping her mother recover. Ms. Leanne then got to the point. She had a job for Asha. It was simple, she claimed. Deliver a package to Pub Wickney. Asha, confused by the lack of details, asked for more information, but Miss Leanne brushed her off, urging her to decide quickly. Plenty of other maids would jump at this opportunity, she warned. When Miss Leanne mentioned the job came with extra pay and help toward her mother's medical bills, Asha agreed, though uneasily. Before sending her off, Miss Leanne gave strict instructions. Don't open the package, don't talk about it, and understand that her life depended on keeping quiet. With those ominous words ringing in her ears, Asha climbed into the waiting carriage. The driver was silent the entire ride, not even glancing her way. When they arrived, Asha stepped out, thanked him awkwardly despite his indifference, and steeled herself. "You've got this," she whispered, clutching the package. As she approached Pub Wickney, loud voices boomed from inside. "Come on in. Only 1,000 kwat per hour. Beautiful and handsome slaves to serve you tonight." The place looked far worse than Asha had imagined, filthy, loud, and filled with an unsettling energy. Before she could process her disgust, a man approached her, smirking. "Hey there, cutie. What are you doing out here all alone?" Another man chimed in. "Come inside. We'll show you a good time." Asha's heart raced as she dodged their advances and hurried inside, clutching the package like it was a lifeline. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of fear and regret. What have I gotten myself into? She wondered. As she pushed open the heavy door and stepped into Pub Wickney, the scent of alcohol and desperation hitting her like a wave. Inside the dimly lit room, Leo, chained and battered, heard a faint noise from across the space. His eyes darted toward the sound, but he saw nothing. He sighed, chalking it up to his imagination playing tricks on him again. Time had become a blur, and he had long stopped keeping track of how long he'd been locked away. A year ago, he remembered refusing food when a guard had brought it. The guard had sneered, reminding him that food wasn't cheap and forcing it into his mouth when he resisted. Leo, seething, had complained about being treated like a slave. The guard just laughed and spat. "You're just like your mother. What a tragedy she was. Too bad for the soldier who killed her." That memory burned in his mind as Leo stretched, his stomach gnawing with hunger. The pain of his loss mixed with the ache of his body. But before he could sink deeper into thought, the same guard returned, taunting him again about dinner. This time, Leo snapped. He grabbed the guard by the mouth and with unexplainable strength tore him apart. When the commotion brought more guards, Leo fought them barehanded, his strength growing with each blow. They tried to subdue him, but he easily overpowered them. Panic set in and the remaining guards fled to summon Pierre. That was the day Leo discovered he wasn't ordinary. He was something else entirely. Pierre eventually arrived, barking orders to bring Leo down. The guards attacked relentlessly, and Leo tore through them like paper. It took a blow to his back to finally drop him. Pierre, furious but intrigued, ordered the guards to inject him with curtia. The moment the needle pierced his skin, a searing pain erupted through his body, burning like fire. When Leo woke, his body felt like it had been torn apart and stitched back together. Pierre stood nearby, smirking. "When did you get so strong, boy?" he sneered. "Don't worry, I'll make good use of you. The fighting ring needs someone like you." His mocking words stung as he ordered Leo to be locked away, ensuring he'd never escape. Leo, lying in chains, wished for it all to end. His heart ached, and his mind swirled with anger and despair. Just then, he heard a soft voice call out, breaking the silence. Startled, he looked toward the door. Asha stood there, clutching a package, her wide eyes scanning the room. "Is anyone here?" she asked hesitantly. For a moment, Leo wondered if she was real or just another cruel trick of his mind. 20 minutes earlier, Asha stood outside the door, telling herself to stay calm and stop overthinking. When she finally opened it, the scene inside made her freeze in shock. The chaos and cruelty were worse than anything she'd imagined. Someone shoved her from behind, snapping her out of it, and grumbled about blocking the entrance. She approached the bartender and stated her purpose. She was from Count Laspiten's estate to deliver something to the owner. The bartender nodded, opened a door, and gestured for her to follow. He led her through a narrow alley to another door, where he informed someone inside that the package had arrived. A massive man appeared and told her to follow him. As they walked, she couldn't help but notice how intimidating he looked, though she told herself not to let it show. The man eventually announced her arrival. A cheerful voice welcomed them, and Asha quickly introduced herself as a maid from Laspiten Manor, bowing politely. The man, Mr. Pierre, smirked at her nervousness and reassured her they didn't harm people who helped them. He dismissed the large man and offered her tea, boasting about its quality, though he joked it might not match what she was used to at the manor. Asha declined politely, saying she couldn't stay long, and handed over the package. Pierre opened it, and she tried to keep her face neutral as she saw it was packed with gold. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't realized she'd been carrying such a fortune. She reminded herself to keep calm, though her mind was racing with questions about what she had just delivered. Pierre read the letter, which mentioned an even larger payment next time, then handed Asha a gift. She thanked him, asked to leave, and he wished her a pleasant evening, adding he looked forward to working with her again. She quickly left, relieved it was over. Confused by the winding paths, she took a wrong turn and entered a dark room. The smell hit her first, then the sight of dead animals scattered on the floor. She froze, but a faint sound of breathing drew her attention. She spotted a figure and realized it was a person. Leo sat bleeding on the ground. She moved toward him, but he threatened her to stay back. She calmly told him she wanted to help. Seeing how severe his injuries were, she knew he wouldn't survive without immediate aid. Ignoring her mother's warning to never use her power, she touched him, her hands glowing faintly as his wounds began to heal. Leo stared at her, stunned as his strength returned. He weakly asked who she was. Before she could respond, a guard's voice boomed from outside, ordering her to leave immediately. Asha overheard 2 guards outside the dark room. One wondered if she might be inside, but the other dismissed it, saying they had more important things to do, like catching monsters. She held her breath, trembling at how close they were. Once they left, she glanced back at the man. She didn't know his story, but couldn't shake the thought of leaving him there to suffer. Introducing herself as Asha, she promised to return, and as she ran out, he softly called her name before falling asleep. She stumbled in the street, her knees scraping the ground. The glowing lights of the night butterfly district seemed brighter, like a cruel trap for the desperate. The air was heavy with a sweet scent that lured people into bargaining their lives away. Around her, animals lay dying, slaves moaned, and people shouted over deals. She thought about how powerless people like her were, always used and discarded. Tears welled up as she realized everything she had endured had led her here. Stopping by a river, she washed her face, telling herself she couldn't go home looking like this. She thought of her mother and the worry that would surely fill her face. At the hospital late that night, Annie met her at the door, shocked to see her bruised face and bloody knees. She asked if Asha had walked all the way there, but Asha just greeted her and went straight inside, collapsing onto a bed. Annie sighed, watching her. Asha never stopped. She worked tirelessly at the manor, came to the hospital on weekends, and cared for her mother without a break. Annie couldn't decide if that was admirable or plain reckless. Covering Asha with a blanket, she wished her a quiet night. Back at the manor a few days later, Asha's focus wavered. The chef barked at her to hurry with the salt, but her hands were slow as she peeled potatoes. She couldn't stop thinking about the man in the dark room. Lost in thought, she cut her hand. Blood dripped onto the counter, and the chef yelled for her to leave and take care of it. She nodded, muttering an apology as she stepped out. She thought about how exhausted she was and imagined Annie's sharp words if she found out Asha still wasn't resting properly. Asha struggled to find the first aid kit, knowing she still had laundry duty later. She grabbed it, patched up her hand quickly, and sighed, already dreading how much it would hurt when she dipped it in water. Blaming herself for being careless, she pushed through and returned to the kitchen to prepare spicy dishes. The chef noticed her persistence and marveled at how stubborn she was, continuing to work despite the pain. At the end of the day, she collapsed on her bed, exhausted. Her hand throbbed, but her mind kept drifting to the man with violet eyes. She checked her bag and counted 12 pills, debating whether to use some now or save them for him. Infection crossed her mind, but before she could decide, a knock came at the door. Someone informed her that Lord Benjamin wanted to see her immediately. She groaned, but answered that she was on her way. When she arrived at his room, she announced herself and he invited her in, apologizing for calling so late. He explained he'd skipped lunch and was now starving, asking if she could make him a quick snack. She agreed and was about to leave when he stopped her. His sharp eyes landed on her hand, wrapped clumsily in a towel. He asked what happened, and she mumbled something about a potato-peeling mishap. He raised an eyebrow and asked why she hadn't applied proper ointment. She admitted she couldn't find any. His expression darkened as he unwrapped the makeshift bandage to check the wound. Seeing the red, swollen cut, his jaw tightened. "This is worse than just a scratch," he said, his tone sharp. Asha winced, more at his anger than the pain. She stammered that she'd take care of it later, but he shook his head. "Stay here," he ordered, walking to his cabinet to grab his own medical supplies. As he treated her wound with careful hands, he muttered, "You're not a machine, Asha. Take care of yourself." She tried to protest, but he silenced her with a stern look. "If you break, who's going to peel my potatoes?" he added with a smirk, making her laugh despite herself. Asha sat down as Lord Benjamin treated her hand, offering her ointment and telling her to use it until her wound healed. She hesitated, feeling the salve was too valuable, but he insisted it wasn't up for discussion. He reminded her to take care of herself and not to push too hard, urging her to rest for the day. Despite her protests, he assured her it was fine and that he'd already informed the staff. When she tried to argue, he joked about confiscating her potatoes if she worked again, causing her to smile. She thanked him and promised not to forget his kindness. That night, lying in bed, she stared at the salve, still in disbelief over his treatment of her. She thought about his words, "Don't get hurt again," and couldn't help but smile, deciding maybe it was time to take a break from the potatoes. The next day, Asha stayed busy, waiting for Miss Leanne to call for her, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the night before, leaving her with a feeling she couldn't quite explain. As she worked, she noticed a cat attacking a bird. She chased the cat away, scooping up the bird to find it badly hurt. She took it inside, remembering how her powers could heal small injuries but not serious wounds. After a moment of hesitation, she healed the bird, laughing as it hopped onto her, tickling her hand. She told it to go home before dark and released it, feeling a small sense of joy before returning to her tasks. Later, Miss Leanne assigned her to deliver something to the butterfly again. Asha felt a strange excitement, and Tina noticed her mood, joking that it must be because she had found a man. Asha simply smiled and checked her bag, making sure she had everything, including the medicine, before running off. At the butterfly, the man there confirmed everything was in order and handed her an envelope, wishing her well. She thanked him and left quickly, glad to be alone. She made her way to the room where the man was kept, following the smell of blood to track it down. When she opened the door, she found him in even worse condition. She rushed to his side, asking if he was in pain and if they had hurt him again. The room was darker than before, and she could see how bad his injuries were. She apologized for taking so long and told him she wanted to remove the gag so he could speak. He asked how she had gotten in again, urging her to leave, but she refused, insisting she couldn't leave him like this. She promised to treat his wounds, warning him that it would hurt. But he tried to yell at her to stop. Asha's hand began to glow as she touched his wounds, healing them little by little. The room smelled sweet and sour, and she could tell by his hazy eyes and soft groans that he had been drugged with cruelty, a magical sedative usually used for tranquilizing monsters. While not entirely illegal, it was strictly forbidden to use it on humans. Asha knew that the wealthy sometimes took small doses for pleasure, but overuse had dangerous side effects, even fatal ones. She thought about how many runaway slaves ended up in the hospital from cruelty overdoses, with nothing anyone could do to help them. He groaned in pain and begged her to stop, but she told him to hang on, promising she was almost done. As she continued, memories of her mother flooded her mind. She recalled trying to heal her, telling her to hold on just a little longer, and promising she could cure her with more time. But her mother had asked her to stop, saying she had done enough. Asha had cried, insisting that she could still help, and now, with tears streaming down her face, she continued healing him, telling herself she couldn't give up. He looked at her, bewildered, and asked who she was and why she was helping him. When she finished, she told him the first round of treatment was done and asked if she could apply some ointment to prevent scars. She reassured him it wasn't dangerous, just something to help with the pain. He looked at her suspiciously, but she promised him it had no smell, worked fast, and would ease the pain. He smiled at her and said he trusted her, calling her master. As she carefully applied the ointment, she asked his name. Lee, he replied, and she said it was a nice name. He then noticed her injured hand and asked what had happened. She explained that she'd hurt herself while working, laughing lightly and calling herself a bit clumsy. He asked what kind of work she did, and she told him she was just a maid at Luspatin Manor. Lee stared at her, and she wondered why he was looking at her so intently. Before Asha could ask Lee anything, she heard footsteps approaching. Realizing she needed to leave, she thought about sneaking away quietly, but Lee begged her not to go. He called her master, tears streaming down his face, and pleaded with her not to leave him, asking her to help him or even end his life rather than leaving him there. Asha felt deep pity for him, but told him she had to go, promising to return and check on his wounds. His cries grew louder as she left the room. Later, after completing her task, Ms. Leanne rewarded her with an extra day off. Even though she was supposed to rest, Asha couldn't stop thinking about Lee. She thought about how he had a name, something many runaway slaves often lost along with their sense of identity. She reflected on the effects of cruelty, how it turned people into hollow shells with no will of their own. Those addicted to it were used and discarded like puppets. Yet Lee still expressed his emotions and pain, which gave her hope that he wasn't entirely lost. She also wondered why he had called her master. She thought it was strange since she was just a slave herself. Then she remembered something odd she had seen in Mr. Pierre's office, the key hidden in one of his drawers. She wondered if it was the key to Lee's handcuffs. For a moment, the thought of using it crossed her mind, but she quickly dismissed it, scolding herself for even considering it. She felt conflicted, unsure of what she could do if she saved him, and guilty for wanting to help him only to ease her own conscience. When she returned to work, Miss Sal asked about her health, as Miss Leanne had told everyone she had been unwell. Asha reassured her that she was fine. Miss Sal then told her she had baked cookies for Lord Benjamin, and there were 2 left over for her. She added that Asha needed to eat well to keep up her energy since she was still growing. Asha appreciated the gesture, and the cookies looked delicious. While enjoying the moment, the other chefs stood nervously nearby. Miss Sal turned to them and encouraged them not to be shy. They all presented small gifts they had prepared for Asha. She thanked them, feeling touched by their kindness, and they expressed hopes of improving their work and skills. Just then, Tina ran into the room shouting Asha's name. She asked what was wrong, and Tina quickly told her there was bad news. Asha asked what it was, and Tina explained that Miss Liane had summoned her again. Asha thought to herself that she had only just returned from the butterfly. Smiling, she joked with Tina, saying she thought something truly terrible had happened. Tina, looking worried, asked what could be worse than this. She grabbed Asha's hand and asked her to promise to tell her if anything was wrong. Asha laughed and reassured her that she would, appreciating the concern. As they walked with Miss Liane, she reminded Asha to watch her manners. Miss Liane warned her that even the smallest mistake could cost her more than just her job. She then asked why Lord Jaden had requested her. Asha thought about how notorious he was among the slaves. Rumors said he had committed every crime except murder. She wondered why someone like him would want her. Miss Liane told her it wasn't her place to question and reminded her that as a slave, her job was to stay in her place and hold her tongue, no matter what happened. When they entered the room, Lord Jaden seemed surprised. He looked at Asha and asked if she was the one sent for his errand. Miss Liane excused herself from the room, leaving Asha behind. Asha immediately noticed the familiar smell of drugs lingering in the air. It reminded her of something magical. He asked her to come closer, tapping the bed for her to approach. Asha hesitated but politely introduced herself as Asha and explained that she worked in the kitchen. She asked if he needed anything. The smell became stronger, making it hard to ignore. She recognized it as the scent of a magic potion. He told her not to be afraid and explained that he just wanted to meet the person who had been helping him with such an important task. He confirmed her name and then brought out the gift she had received from Mr. Pierre, asking if she knew what it was. She quickly responded that she didn't know anything about what she delivered to the night butterfly, saying she only did as she was instructed. He clarified that he wasn't talking about the deliveries, but about the card she had received. A wave of panic washed over her, realizing how bad the situation was. She hadn't expected him to be involved. He motioned for her to come closer, and when she did, he assured her there was no need to be scared. He pointed to the card and said it was the same thing she always brought for him. He poured some liquor onto the card, explaining how valuable it was and how much joy it brought him. Asha was shocked, wondering what she had done. She blamed her greed for leading her to take this job, recalling the promises she had made to herself before accepting it. He mentioned that Ms. Liane knew exactly what he liked and asked how she had been chosen for the task. He speculated that Miss Liane might have known he would want to meet her. Asha began to feel a deep sense of fear, as she realized he wasn't thinking clearly. She thought about ways to escape, but before she could make a move, he grabbed her hand. He said he had heard she was the one who delivered Lord Benjamin's breakfast every morning, and sarcastically remarked on how amusing it was that brothers could share the same taste. She tried to pull away, but he held on firmly. He began insulting his brother, calling him a lowlife who always tried to take what was his. He accused Benjamin of trying to strip him of everything he valued, including his honor, position, and their parents' trust. He claimed that she, like everyone else, had fallen for Benjamin's tricks. He grew angrier, accusing her of being like other girls who preferred his brother over him. His anger escalated, and he forced himself on her. Asha cried, denying his accusations about Benjamin, but her protests only seemed to fuel his rage. He raised his hand to hit her. Just then, there was a knock on the door. It was Miss Liane. She asked what was happening and informed him that his lordship wished to see him. He pushed Asha away, muttering that the fun was just starting. He told Miss Liane to let his lordship know he was getting dressed and would be there soon. He also asked her to fetch some strong cologne to mask the smell of the potion. Asha wept as she tried to pull herself together. Liane told her to go to the hospital and explained that when Lord Jaden was under the influence of the potion, he would forget everything that happened the next day. She also reminded Asha of her position as a slave and told her to prepare for the next task. Asha's mind flooded with memories of her past. She remembered all the suffering she had endured since she began working for nobles as a young child. She recalled being wrongly accused, beaten for no reason, and forced to eat scraps. She thought about the two brothers who had beaten her just because she looked at them. She remembered countless instances where she had been treated as less than human, all while enduring it to earn money for her mother's medicine. The only people who could provide the money she needed were the nobles, and they never saw any reason to treat her with kindness. She suddenly snapped out of her thoughts and realized it was time to get back to work. As she stood up, the idea of doing some exercises to clear her mind crossed her thoughts. The thought of quitting lingered, but she couldn't stop thinking about Lee and what would happen to him if she left. Asha couldn't bring herself to turn her back on him. She knew she had to return to Pub Wickney. The next day at the manor, she approached Miss Leanne and told her she'd like to take the vacation she had saved up. Ms. Leanne told her she could take a week off after finishing her current task, and Asha thanked her. In the kitchen, Tina noticed the bruises on Asha's face and shouted, asking what had happened. Asha quickly replied that she had fallen down the stairs. Tina expressed concern, asking how bad the fall was for her face to look like that. She grabbed Asha and insisted on taking some of her work to help her avoid straining herself. Miss Sal joined the conversation, telling Asha she had been working too hard. The head of the kitchen also chimed in, promising to be lenient and not let her overwork. Two kids from the kitchen came to Asha and told her they had grown up enough to handle their work, so she didn't need to help them anymore. They were big enough to take on her chores. Asha was touched by their affection and thanked them. In her mind, she thought about how she almost forgot how many precious people surrounded her. Later that night at the Night Butterfly, the big soldier escorted her to Mr. Pierre's office, telling her he would be back in a minute. As soon as the guard left, she hurried to search for the key she had seen Pierre hide in his drawer. She found the key and also an envelope. She wondered what it was, but quickly put it aside as Mr. Pierre walked in. He apologized for being late, saying he had a business meeting. She told him she wasn't angry, and he asked to see the box. She presented it to him, and he seemed satisfied. He handed her the same pack as before, and she bowed, thanking him and preparing to leave. As she walked out, she went through the letter she had found in the drawer. Her heart sank as she realized what it said. The letter stated that Asha was nothing but a slave, and that Mr. Pierre was free to use her as he wished. It also said that if she ever stepped out of line, he was welcome to dispose of her, even kill her if needed, as he could always replace her. Asha felt devastated, realizing that when Ms. Leanne had promised to pay for her mother's bills, it wasn't out of kindness. She had only been using her as a pawn. She called herself an idiot for feeling grateful. At least today's visit had worked out well because she had found the key. She thought the key must be for Lee's handcuffs, since it even had a tag labeled Slave 13. She silently thanked Lord Benjamin for teaching her how to read. Rushing to Lee, she found him badly injured and asked how long he had been in this state. Without wasting time, she immediately began to work on healing him. In her mind, she knew they didn't have much time. Mr. Pierre would realize the key was missing soon. She showed Lee the key and told him they needed to get out of there. He was shocked and asked how she had gotten the key. She managed to unlock the first handcuff and felt relieved when it worked. Moving on to the second, she freed him, but he collapsed. She urged him to take her hand. Meanwhile, Mr. Pierre had already discovered the key was gone. He muttered that this was why slaves couldn't be trusted. The big guard asked if he should bring Asha back. Mr. Pierre responded coldly, saying no, they should just kill her. The chains moved through the air and latched back onto Lee. He told Asha to leave, insisting he would be fine and that she should go. She was confused, unsure of what to do, when suddenly she remembered a similar situation. They hadn't been able to free a slave who had escaped because the doctor had explained that the chains were meant for monsters and couldn't be removed by normal means. Determined to help him, she told him to hold on, promising to find a way. Quickly, she started making a potion to break the curse. She added the medicine given to her by Lord Benjamin and crushed some pills into the mix. Ironically, The chains meant for monsters could be loosened by covering them with a scent that beasts couldn't stand. She poured the mixture onto the chains. He yelled at her, asking what she was doing and telling her to leave. But Asha refused, reminding him of her promise to save him and insisting they had to get out alive. Just then, the guards burst into the room. One of them remarked that he knew she would be there. They ordered each other to grab her and kill her before she could do anything. Asha kept trying to free Lee, ignoring the danger. As the guards closed in, the chains suddenly snapped. Lee immediately sprang into action, taking down the guards with ease. Asha stood there, shocked, watching him. The man who had begged her to save him was now effortlessly taking down the guards. She felt a chill of fear as she realized how dangerous he seemed. Lee noticed her fear and tried to calm her, saying he only wanted to protect her. He called her master again, and Asha noticed he was shaking. When she moved closer, she saw tears in his eyes. She thought to herself that this was a man who could kill without hesitation, yet he was terrified of someone else's touch. He asked her if she didn't want him anymore. Before she could answer, fire suddenly spread through the room, set off by the monsters. Lee became worried that things were getting too dangerous for her. Asha reminded him of her promise. They were both going to get out alive. The fire intensified, spreading quickly. The guards tried to put it out, but the monsters had started escaping and fighting back. The commotion from below alarmed the party upstairs. Chaos erupted as the monsters broke free, attacking anyone in sight. Amidst the madness, Asha carried Lee on her shoulder, realizing he was burning up with fever. She told him they were almost out when suddenly a monster appeared in front of them, roaring loudly. She screamed in fear, waking Lee from his daze. He immediately killed the monster, blocking their path. He turned to check on her, but before she could answer, another monster bit her leg. Without hesitation, Lee killed it too. Seeing the fire spreading and the monsters closing in, Lee realized they had to act fast or they would both die. He told her to leave, urging her to run while he distracted the monsters. He reminded her that staying would mean certain death for both of them. Asha hesitated, but finally agreed, promising to go find help. Meanwhile, 2 knights were walking back home after their shift. Percent. The junior knight remarked that he thought they'd be in a knife fight by now. The senior knight chuckled and told him it had barely been 10 minutes since the shift started. He explained that trouble usually brewed around midnight, especially near a pub called Wickney, which was popular with troublemakers and dangerous folk. He warned the younger knight that even most knights avoided that area because of how unsafe it was. The junior knight asked if it wasn't their duty to stop such people. The senior knight sighed and said it wasn't worth risking his life over. He added that if the younger knight wasn't careful, he'd end up dead young. The junior knight argued that knights were supposed to protect the system, but the senior knight knocked him on the head, telling him to think about his life first. As they walked, they saw her running toward them. The senior knight stopped her and asked what was going on. She hurriedly told him her friend was in trouble and needed help. He asked her to calm down and explain, but she insisted there was no time, saying the monsters had escaped. He quickly told the junior knight to ring the alarm and call for backup while he would handle the situation. As the younger knight ran off, he couldn't help but think how ironic it was that the senior knight who had just warned him about being reckless was now rushing into danger like a hero. Back at the scene, people were gossiping about the fire, speculating on what had happened. Some murmured that everyone inside must have turned to ash, while others were already planning to loot any jewels that might be left behind. When she and the knight arrived, they found the place engulfed in flames. She tried to run into the fire, shouting for Lee, but the knight grabbed her and said she would die if she went in. Some men brought buckets of water to prevent the fire from spreading to nearby buildings. She grabbed one of the buckets and poured the water over herself before running into the flames. The knight tried to stop her, but she was too fast. Realizing there was no other choice, he poured water on himself and followed her. Inside, he found her trying to wake Lee, who was pinned under a block. She struggled to lift it, insisting she would get him out. The knight scolded her for being reckless, but then offered to help. He told her to pull Lee out as soon as he lifted the block. Together, they managed to free him. The knight commended her effort and said he would carry Lee. As they ran out, the fire grew fiercer, and the building started to collapse. Once outside, they collapsed on the ground, and the knight remarked how close they had come to dying. She immediately checked on Lee, asking if he was okay. The knight suggested they get a doctor, but then noticed the slave mark on Lee's body. He hesitated, explaining that, according to imperial law, helping a runaway slave could lead to punishment for interfering with private property. She grabbed his hand and begged him to help, tears streaming down her face. Touched by her desperation, he thought about how much he hated getting involved in these situations, but also about how his wife would scold him for not helping. After a moment, he agreed, but warned her that no hospital would treat a runaway slave. She reassured him that she knew a place they could go. When they arrived at the doctor's, the man was shocked by Lee's condition and asked what had happened. The knight told him to focus on treating Lee first. She asked if Lee would survive, and the doctor replied that only time would tell. They quickly got him onto a bed, hoping for the best. Lee lay on the bed, clearly in pain, while she sat beside him, feeling bitter about his condition. The doctor and Annie were also in the room. Annie suggested she get her leg treated first and then come back to look after Lee. The doctor agreed, saying he would stay with Lee in the meantime. She nodded and left, but as Annie began stitching her wound, she cried out in pain. Annie told her to bear with it because the wound was deep. Meanwhile, the doctor finished bandaging Lee, saying he had done everything he could, and now they could only watch over him. Later that night, she lay in the bed next to his, watching him for a while to make sure he was still alive. She tiptoed over to his bed, resting her head on his chest to listen for his heartbeat. It was faint, but she thanked God he was alive. She thought about how she had used her powers to save animals and people before, but never like this, never so recklessly. She didn't know why, but she felt compelled to help him. She used her power again, asking him to be strong and live. Days passed, and she spent her vacation helping him recover. One day, she entered the room to find him sitting up. Surprised, she ran to him, asking if he was awake and if he could see her, considering the extent of his burns. When he looked at her in an odd way, she asked if he didn't recognize her. He responded by saying she had saved him. He then asked about Mr. Pierre and his men. She told him they were either dead or missing. He nodded but said there was one good thing, being able to see her again. He placed her hand on his face, but she quickly pulled it away, asking what he was doing. He asked if he was useless to her now because of his injuries. She reassured him that he wasn't, and told him not to think like that anymore. She reminded him that the people who had tormented him were gone, and there was no need for him to call her master. She told him again that she was just an ordinary maid. He asked if it bothered her when he called her master. She said it wasn't that, and he said he would keep calling her master because he liked being hers. She thought to herself that they could work on that later. For now, she was just happy he was awake. She asked if it hurt when he pressed her hand against his face, and he replied that it didn't. In fact, her hand felt like medicine to him. Back at the manor, work was in full swing, and everyone was busy. The senior chef was giving out instructions, and amid the bustling day, she began humming a song as she peeled potatoes, moving to the rhythm. Everyone stopped and smiled at her. Miss Sal called out, and she responded. Miss Sal asked if something good had happened, but she simply replied that it was nothing. Miss Sal couldn't help but think there was something different about her. She had a hunch it might be a man. She believed Asha had found a young man, while both Lord Benjamin and Lee missed her dearly. Later, she visited Lord Benjamin, and he asked if she had been busy because he hardly saw her anymore. She apologized, and he mentioned that she had lost weight since the last time he saw her. He asked if she was tired, but she assured him she was fine. He then asked about her hand, and she said it was okay since she got his treatment. Her thoughts, however, drifted to Lee. She wondered if his bandages had been changed, and how much pain he must still be in, since his wounds weren't healed yet. Lord Benjamin asked about the book he had given her, and she told him that thanks to him, she had become an avid reader. But once again, her mind wandered back to Lee, imagining him sitting in the hospital room all alone. He asked if she had eaten, and she said yes, though in her mind she thought that Lee needed food more than she did. He was surprised by her response and the way she spoke to him, asking if she was mad at him. She quickly said no, but he pointed out that she wasn't even looking at him. She was startled, realizing her distraction had made her forget her manners. He said he thought they were friends, and she reassured him she wasn't upset with him. Just then, Lord Jaden barged into the room and Benjamin's expression immediately changed. Jaden noticed and asked if Benjamin wasn't happy to see him. Benjamin wondered what Jaden wanted from him this time. Although they were brothers, they never got along and despised each other. Jaden lived a carefree life, indulging in pleasures and avoiding serious responsibilities. Benjamin, on the other hand, worked hard, studied, trained, and refined his ways as a nobleman. But because Jaden was the eldest, his opinions held more weight in the family, and their father entrusted everything to him. This imbalance frustrated Benjamin, who tried to outshine his brother in every way. But Jaden, instead of being proud, had developed an inferiority complex. One day, Benjamin rode into the village on horseback, and the people cheered for him. He thanked them for their warm welcome, and they whispered among themselves that he was nothing like Jaden, who wouldn't even acknowledge them. Jaden approached the girl and made a remark about how close Benjamin seemed to be with her. Benjamin immediately stood up and positioned himself between them, demanding to know why Jaden had barged into his room. Jaden laughed and teased his brother, asking if he was angry because of the maid. Her mind drifted to the time she had been in Jaden's room. He had once said they both seemed to have the same taste in women, mentioning that he and the maid shared a connection, and that she had been trembling at the sight of him. Benjamin asked what he had done to her, and Jaden responded that she had gotten on his nerves, so he taught her a lesson. She began to cry, thinking she would never be able to look Benjamin in the eye again. She turned her face away, but then found herself looking straight at him, feeling ashamed. She hated her helplessness and hated that he now knew what had happened. Out of nowhere, Benjamin landed a blow on Jaden. Jaden was shocked, thinking to himself that Benjamin had never hit him before, no matter what he had done. She was equally shocked. Benjamin walked closer to his brother and told him that he had tolerated his despicable behavior for long enough. He said Jaden had abused their father's authority, ruining his own life, which was none of his concern. But now Jaden was ruining the lives of others, and that was unacceptable. Jaden accused him of being selfish and hiding his true nature. He claimed Benjamin had everything: physique, skill, intelligence, and had even taken over some of their father's duties. Jaden said Benjamin was trying to take the position of heir, but that it was his by birthright. He added that no matter how much Benjamin screamed or fought, it wouldn't make a difference. Benjamin looked at him with pity and threw him toward the guards, ordering them to take him out. Jaden yelled back that Benjamin could call him whatever he wanted, but everything he desired would always belong to him, including the maid. Hearing this, Benjamin grabbed him by the throat. Prince Benjamin tells Jaden that he does not care about him, and that whatever he does with himself is none of his concern. Jaden's face twists with fury as he charges toward him, demanding to know how he dares to speak to him like that. Before he can get any closer, a hand grabs his wrist and twists it, stopping him in his tracks. A voice asks if he thinks their father would be happy to hear about the riot and mayhem he is causing. If he truly believes his position as heir is at risk, does he really believe that? A whisper follows, cold and sharp, telling him that if his spot had truly been wanted, he would have been dead already in the most miserable way. No one would have known or cared because that would have brought peace to their father, to him, and to the whole house. Neither he nor the maid deserves the treatment they receive from him. He is pushed away, his balance faltering, as the voice tells him that if he wishes to keep his position, he should put his head down. A male servant enters the room with the butler and Miss Leanne, reporting that they have been brought as instructed. Orders are given for Jaden to be taken out of the room. The butler nags that he must have been drunk again. Miss Leanne tells them to take him quickly to his bed. As he is dragged away, he swears on his brother and promises to get him. After the room clears, the male servant admits that he will clean the mess, but he is told to leave it and go. He obeys immediately. Benjamin notices that Asha has already started cleaning. She is picking up the broken pieces of a plate. He calls her name and hugs her from behind, telling her to stop hurting herself, saying that it is exhausting and suffocating. He calls himself an idiot for not knowing what his brother has put her through. His mind drifts back. Every time he sees her, he feels a deep pity for her. She is always working hard, pushing herself to the point of exhaustion. At first, he has no interest in her, but then he starts noticing things. She always looks tired in the morning. Her eyes are always red and her hands are dry and cracked. He remembers when he first notices the embroidery on her bonnet. His eyes start taking in every small detail about her. One day, she brings him tea and warns him to be careful because it is hot. He takes that moment to ask about the stitches on her bonnet. He points out that other maids do not have such embroidery and asks if there is a special reason behind hers. She chuckles and tells him that her mother did it for her. She loves animals, so her mother always embroidered animals onto her clothes. She adds that her mother had not realized the bonnet was part of her uniform and had stitched on it. She kept it because she did not want to ruin the stitches. Then she asks if it bothers him. Before she can finish, he cuts her off and tells her that it is beautiful. Her mother worked hard on it, and she should cherish it at all costs. That day, she smiles at him with appreciation. He sees her face light up despite how tired she must have been. Even when she has every reason to quit, she has never once lost her smile. As he holds her, he tells her that all he wants is to see her face light up again. She replies that she never imagined something like this would happen to her, but she will be all right. It is all in the past, and she will get over it as long as she keeps herself busy. He tells her that is not true. He can see how difficult it has been for her. She must have been terrified and distressed. He asks what he can do to lift her spirit. He hates himself for not caring for her before. He apologizes and promises to do whatever he can to make sure Jaden never comes near her again. He assures her that she will face no repercussions for this incident and that no one will blame her, not even Miss Leanne or the other servants. He tells her he is sorry and hugs her. She is so shocked that she starts crying. He tells her she can cry all she wants. Her sobs grow louder. He encourages her, telling her to let it out. She has been through so much. After some time, she finally leaves the room. She thinks to herself that she must have cried for too long. She feels embarrassed for wetting his clothes with her tears, so she decides to make sure they are cleaned. She also thinks about the heat. It must be the summer period. Meanwhile, his mind flashes back to what Jaden said about her earlier. He thinks to himself that he must have gotten too close to her. If he goes any further, she might be in trouble. Outside the hospital, Anna is cleaning when she sees Asha walking toward the building. She thinks to herself that here she comes again, walking as always at the crack of dawn. She confronts her, saying that she must be really stubborn to come all the way this early. But there is something different this time. She looks exhausted. The nurse asks what is wrong, but she seems lost in thought, completely zoned out. Concerned, she reaches out and touches her, wondering if something has happened. Her mind flashes back to how she has been all over the place, worrying about Lee. Something must really be going on, but she knows it is pointless to ask. There will be no answer. She wonders if maybe her mother's illness has gotten worse. She finally asks how he is doing. The response comes that he is probably having his morning checkup with Dr. Nam. She asks again if he is getting any better. The question brings hesitation. A deep thought follows. He is definitely recovering, and in fact he is recovering at an impossible rate. It almost makes her wonder if he is even human. The burns he came in with are healing, though there will certainly be some long-term effects. But ever since Asha left, he has refused food, keeping to himself like a dog abandoned by its owner. He skips his meals and keeps muttering the word master under his breath like some kind of enchantment. She can only assume that means her. It has reached the point where he now refuses treatment from other nurses except for her. He only gives in when Dr. Nam tells him that she is away for a few days and that she would not be happy if he does not get better. And when he hears that she is coming, he starts preparing himself. A question breaks the long train of thought. She asks if he is not recovering, saying that Dr. Nam had barely saved him and asking if it had been critical. A quick reply follows, assuring her that he is recovering just fine. He is tough, and there is no need to worry. But for the rest, she will have to see for herself. A thought runs through her mind. She has been so busy that she has not been able to take care of him properly. She should have sent letters to ask how he was doing, but there has been no time. Her mind drifts to the message she received about her mother. The letter says that her condition is getting worse, that she cannot stop coughing. It is written by a concerned neighbor who has been looking after her. It is bad enough that he is in the hospital. Now her mother's illness is worsening. Life is tough. Then she hears a familiar voice calling her. "Master." The words reach her ears. Is it really him? He runs toward her and hugs her tightly, telling her how much he has missed her. She asks how he is feeling and if his wounds still hurt. He assures her that he is getting better, that he is following the doctor's orders and taking his medicine properly. Then he repeats how much he has missed her and asks what has taken her so long. She tells him that she has missed him too, and that she is glad to see him doing better. He looks at her, his eyes filled with something deeper. He admits that he thought he would never see her again. He had not known if she would come back. When she had not come to see him, he had thought she had abandoned him because he had become useless. She looks at him and notices the fear in his eyes. Not seeing her has made him anxious. A thought crosses her mind. For someone who has lived such a secluded life, this kind of change must be shocking and terrifying. And to be left by the person who rescued him must be unsettling. She tells him that she has just been busy with work, which is why she has not been able to check on him. She adds that he must have been scared and that she should have explained herself better. He asks if that means she is done with work and will stay with him now. She tiredly tells him that she is not his master and that her work never ends. He then asks if she can quit and stay with him. She tells him she is afraid she cannot do that. She needs money for her mother's treatment and for his recovery. Tears fall from his eyes. She laughs, telling him he looks like a little puppy. She touches his head and smiles. A thought comes to her. Her heart has been through so much, but spending a little time with him has lifted her spirit. On the other hand, he admires how his master smiles. He pulls her close, telling her not to stop. But the moment is interrupted. Dr. Nam arrives and comments that they look mighty cozy together. She quickly pulls away, questioning what has just happened. Turning to him, she asks if he needs anything. He tells her that he would like to speak with her in private. He asks if she can come to his office. Her mind drifts. Maybe something bad has happened to Lee. At the doctor's office, he asks her to sit down. She takes a seat, and he offers her lemon tea, saying it is good for fatigue. He tells her to drink it slowly so it has time to cool. She appreciates the gesture, but her mind keeps worrying. If something has happened, she hopes it is not serious. He seemed fine when she saw him earlier, but she still wonders if there is some illness she is not aware of, or if there is nothing else the doctor can do for him. She asks if his recovery will take a long time. The doctor tells her that it will take time. She brings up the burns, asking if they will never fully heal. He assures her that is not the case. He has seen many people with even worse burns, and they made full recoveries. He reminds her that she saw him earlier, running around perfectly fine, but even though he is relieved for her to see the progress, he feels she should know the truth. The truth is that he is showing signs of long-term addiction to potion. His body already has a considerable amount of toxins, and only the most severe addicts display symptoms like black fingertips. Anyone else with that much poison in their body would not have survived. So the fact that he is even walking is nothing short of a miracle. She feels a deep sadness. She has not realized he is so ill. If she had known, she would have paid more attention. She thinks to herself that this truth is not surprising. When she first met him and then saw him again later, he already looked as if he had been sedated by potion. But she is not a doctor, so she has no way of knowing how bad it is. She has been so sure that he would overcome it, since he is recovering so quickly. Still, she feels that she could have done more. Tears fall as she regrets not paying closer attention instead of being distracted by everything else. She asks what can be done. The doctor reassures her that it is not hopeless. At the rate of his recovery, he will improve with effort and steady treatment. She asks if there is any way to remove the poison from his body. He tells her there is no such method. He has been exposed for too long. He might get better over time, but it will not happen anytime soon. He warns that there could be long-term effects and that his burned face might never fully return to its original state. Luckily, his recovery is remarkable. The doctor almost wonders if he is even human. Any normal patient with such severe burns would have needed months to heal, but he has recovered in a matter of weeks. She asks if that means he can make a full recovery. The doctor admits that with his strength, it is possible he could reach full recovery with time. He calls her name, and she answers. She is aware that nothing is more dangerous than false hope. Many runaway slaves have come to the hospital, and none of them have survived, but she still will not give up. Not until he is free from his suffering. Even if there is only a small chance of him getting better, she wants to do everything she can to help him. She pleads with the doctor to tell her what needs to be done. He agrees that they will not give up on him. She hurries back to his ward, determined that it is time to go all in on his treatment. She will not give up on him. She will protect him no matter what. As she enters, the smell of disinfectant fills the room. She calls his name, but he does not answer. She wonders why he is ignoring her. She calls again, telling him it is her, but there is still no response. It is strange, considering how happy he was to see her earlier. She tells him she has brought him a gift. He finally turns to her, repeating the word gift. She smiles, saying that she has bought him some clothes. Since he is still recovering, he will be out of the hospital soon, and he will not be able to wear the same clothes every day. He asks if she has made them for him. She tells him she does not have the time to make anything, but she has bought them at the market. He tells her he is so happy about it. She tells him she is glad he likes it. She had to guess his size since she does not know his measurements. She suggests that he try them on. He puts on the clothes and asks how he looks. She observes that they are a little small. He tells her he loves them because they are comfortable. He adds that no one has ever given him something this nice. He hugs her, thanking her. She quickly shoves him back and tells him not to do that. He asks what is wrong. She reminds him that she has told him before not to call her master. If others hear, they will get the wrong idea. She raises her voice, telling him to listen carefully. He cannot call her master when other people are around, only in front of Anna or the doctor. Others might try to take advantage of him. He asks if that is the reason. She asks what he means. He explains that the last time she told him to call her by her name, she had not visited him for a whole week. He thought she had been upset with him. Tears fill his eyes as he promises not to do it again. He is really sorry. He pleads with her not to leave him again. She thinks to herself, if he truly believes he is being abandoned again. Her thoughts continue as she remembers the first thing he had been worried about. He had feared that his injuries would make him useless. She wonders if the reason he had been anxious and stayed under his sheets was because he thought she would leave him, because of his addiction. He tells her that he thought she was punishing him for disobeying orders. She is shocked that this is what has been on his mind. No wonder he was so happy to see her earlier. She tells him that he has the wrong idea. She explains that she works as a maid at Losbyton Manor and had been too busy to visit last week. She holds his hand and assures him that she would never punish him. He asks if she hates him. She yells back at him that she absolutely does not. She tells him that she missed him, which is why she came to see him. He asks if she swears it. She stammers, but confirms that she does. He then asks if he can stay with her forever. She tells him that he can, but he needs to stop calling her master. He makes a pinky promise with her and calls her by her name, saying that he wants to stay by her side. He tells her that he is almost better now, but he is scared of being alone. He reminds her that she said he could stay with her forever. and that is all he wants. He says he wants to eat with her, work with her, and just be with her. He asks if he can. Then he mentions that the doctor said his condition is very bad and could be fatal. She tells him that is not true. With steady treatment, he will get better in time. He tells her that there is no way to be sure. If he is fated to die soon, he wants to spend the rest of his days with her. His last wish is to be with her a little longer. Seeing how down he is becoming, she thinks of cheering him up. She tells him that she will speak with the head chef and see if he can get a job at Deepening Manor. He asks if that means he will be able to spend more time with her there. She tells him that she will figure it out somehow. He is so happy that he hugs her and thanks her. She thinks to herself that he sounds so thrilled by the idea. How can she tell him no? She has to make it happen no matter what. At the manor, she takes a deep breath. She has to try to get a job for him as she promised. But every unit seems full. They even tell her that they already have too many staff. She never knew finding a job would be this hard. For the last few weeks, she has been saying whatever she can to soothe him whenever she visits. She finally tells him that they will not be able to work together. He asks why not. She tries to explain that getting a job for him is harder than she thought. He cuts her off, asking if she is trying to get rid of him. She asks what he means. He asks if she does not need him anymore. He wonders how much time he has left and says that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her. She yells at him not to talk like that. He should not give up so soon. They will find him a job at the manor. Now she has made another promise she cannot keep. She tells herself that she should not have promised him a job in the first place. She thinks about it. Bringing a slave like him into the grand home of Deepening Manor will be difficult. Even a passing dog would be considered a better candidate. It will not be easy for him to overcome his past. He still has the mark of a slave on his back. How can she make the manor hire him? Even though nobles have eased up on their views of commoners over the years, they are still just as prejudiced against slaves. She becomes frustrated. Even if a position becomes available, then what? She is pulled from her thoughts when someone calls her name. She is told that she is too young to be sighing away all her luck. She is asked what is wrong since she has been down all day. She is shocked that someone has noticed. She is told that her dark circles show that something is wrong. She is asked if it is about her mother. She denies it but tells herself that it is something out of her control. She is told that whatever it is better to talk to someone. She appreciates the concern. As they continue lunch, one of the male staff asks about replacing the cook who ran away last night. Another male staff member suggests letting her do it. He says that she made the stew today and it was good. They could just get someone to chop vegetables and do the dishes. Someone asks who that someone would be. Another responds that there is no need to hire anyone. The manor could just use another slave. Someone else replies that they have tried, but Mr. Dawson has chased all of them away. They turn to her companion and ask if she can help talk to Mr. Dawson. He is always a bully when it comes to newbies. Another staff member says he does not care about anything except getting another male on the team. He adds that she is a hard worker, but she has no muscles, so he has to do all the heavy lifting. Another staff member mocks him, saying that he is not that good at chopping vegetables anyway and has to earn his keep. He becomes angry and asks what that means. Meanwhile, she is lost in thought. If a cook has run away, then there should be an open position. She asks if the kitchen needs more hands. The answer is yes, but there is no telling how long the next person will last. She is happy. She can find a job for him. She thinks about it carefully. Kitchen work is not easy, but even with his limited social skills, he should be able to do it. The real problem is finding someone to vouch for him when he has no family to speak of. She turns to the woman beside her and asks if she has ever hired a servant who came with no clear reference. The question seems confusing at first, so she explains further. She asks if there was ever a time when an orphan whose entire family had passed away, or someone who had been cut off from their kin, had been hired without proper references. The response is clear. Even in such cases, someone still has to provide a reference. House Deepening is strict about who they hire. The first step is always a reference check, followed by an interview. But without a proper reference, no applicant would even get that far. Hearing this, she laughs softly and admits that she is right. Then, she asks what would happen if she recommends someone she knows. The response is hesitant. She has not been with the manor for long, but she is a hard worker and capable. If the applicant is a friend of those in charge, then maybe they would stand a chance. A smile appears as the thought settles in. It seems like they will soon be hiring an orphan who has lost his entire family. She turns back and asks if she knows anyone looking for work. The response is quick, no. But the question comes again, is she sure? She thinks to herself that, as always, nothing ever gets past the older woman. She reminds herself that thanks to the staff member who ran away, he now has the chance to work with her. But that still leaves the hardest and most important problem to solve. Who can give him a reference? Who would be kind enough to help a slave? No one comes to mind. She gets dressed and looks at her clothes. She has never worn anything like this before. Her regular clothes were ruined in the fire when she rescued him. This is the only outfit she has. But the moment another girl found out, she was given more clothes. That day, new clothes were brought to her since she had nothing to wear. She had tried to refuse, saying she would just buy new ones, but the girl insisted. All her money had been spent on her mother's medicine. She was told that she could not just buy one outfit and keep wearing it every day. There was even a joke that she would get a boyfriend one day and would need to go on dates. She was asked if she would not want to dress properly. The one who gave her the clothes had gained weight and worked at the hospital with no time to socialize. Since the clothes were given to her, she thinks to herself that she should take care of them properly. She hurries to reach him as fast as she can and apologizes for being late. He runs toward her and hugs her tightly. He has been so excited about going out with her that he spent the whole day before getting ready. She tells him that is good, but his face is not fully healed. He should be careful not to rub it against anything. He promises to do his best. Looking at him closely, she realizes he is wearing the clothes she bought for him. Seeing that, she decides she will buy him more. It is her first time taking him outside, and she feels that a crowded place with many people is not the best choice for a first outing. But with all the advice she received, they agreed to go. She had wanted to take things slower, but now it is too late. He gets nervous because of the crowd. She asks him to hold hands because of it. They both hold hands and walk around. They visit many shops, boutiques, and more. She watches him closely. He adapts to the crowd quickly, which makes her believe he is ready for the job. She tells him to wait while she goes to get them something to drink. On the way, she stumbles into a thug. He yells at her. She quickly apologizes. Suddenly, she is pulled back. Arms wrap around her protectively. The thug is shocked and runs away. But then she hears coughing. She turns on the alarm. Fear fills her chest. He is coughing hard. She asks what is wrong. A terrible thought crosses her mind. Is he about to pass out? She thinks that they really need to leave so they do not attract attention. She also wonders if it is one of the side effects the doctor mentioned. He said that after a traumatic event, he would become very stressed. She takes him to an alley, thinking that they should not be disturbed there. She tells him to hang in there, that she knows he is sick. Her mind flashes back to something she read about magic being an extension of the user's heart. She does not know how true it is, but she prays that it is because she does not want him to suffer right now. She awakens her magic powers to heal him. She asks if he is feeling better. He looks zoned out, so she calls his name. She tells him that it is strange that he no longer seems to have a fever and that his breathing is more stable. Looking at her, he thinks that she is so kind, even more caring than his own mother. He stands up and tells her that he feels all better and that they should go. He reminds her that they have one more stop to make. Smiling, he stretches his hand to her. She seems very happy when she sees a type of house. He asks if that is her dream house. She tells him yes, that she has always dreamed of living in that kind of house. She explains in detail that she wants a house where she can have her own garden to grow vegetables and windows that bask in the glow of the sunset. She asks if it would not be great to live in such a house with him and her mother. He tells her that one day he will make that dream come true for her. She asks if he means it, that she will leave it to him. They approach the door and it opens. A friendly-looking man steps out. He is the officer who came to his rescue during the fire outbreak. He tells her that he thought she would have arrived earlier. She presents a gift to him and his wife, telling them that it is not much. The woman appreciates it and says that she has heard a lot about her and that she is adorable. She approaches him to welcome him, but he dodges her. She quickly apologizes on his behalf, saying that he is shy. The woman tells her not to worry, that she just got excited because they just met. She listens as the officer asks why he cannot just write a reference for him. She blinks in surprise. He says that he has seen him work hard, that he is willing to change his life, and that he has someone looking out for him. He asks if that is not enough. She stares at him, unsure of what to say. The boy looks just as surprised. The officer laughs, saying that it is not a big deal. He has connections and can vouch for him as long as he proves himself. She asks if he really means it. The officer nods and tells the boy to come by his office tomorrow. He will make it official. The boy's eyes widen as he grabs her hand excitedly. She laughs and thanks the officer, saying that she did not expect things to work out this way. The officer tells her that she should learn to rely on others sometimes. He says that she is stubborn, but has a good heart. He tells the boy not to disappoint him. The boy nods eagerly and promises that he will not. The officer smiles and tells them to get home safely. As he drives away, the boy keeps staring at her. She asks what is wrong. He shakes his head and says that he just cannot believe it. He asks if he is really going to work at the manor. She nods and tells him that it is finally happening. He jumps excitedly, grabs her hands, and spins her around. She tells him to stop before they trip, but she is laughing. He suddenly stops and looks at her seriously. He tells her that he will work really hard. He will do his best. She nods and tells him that she knows he will. They walk home together, the boy smiling the entire way. The officer insists that a reference from Sir Jack should give Lee all the credibility he needs to secure the job. Asha is a bit stunned, but knows it's true. After all, who could provide a more credible reference than a knight? Still, she doesn't want to risk Sir Jack getting caught up in any trouble if Lee's identity causes issues. She can already picture him being escorted away by other knights, weapons in hand, and that's a thought she definitely doesn't enjoy. As the images run through her mind, she appreciates Sir Jack's generous offer, but turns it down. She doesn't want to put him at risk, especially a knight of the Empire like him. Lee, however, is confident that they can work it all out without anyone getting caught. Asha's still not so sure. Sir Jack doesn't argue that it might be dangerous to vouch for Lee with a reference letter, but he believes with all his heart that neither Asha nor Lee would cause him any trouble. In fact, the most he'd risk is his knight position, and he's near retirement anyway, so he's really not bothered. He stands firm. His offer stands. He wants Lee to get to work now that he's out of the hospital. Asha remains reluctant, reminding him that he's already served them a delicious dinner and done so much for them. She really doesn't think it's wise to ask for anything more from him. She promises to find another way for Lee to get a job, even if it means some creative thinking is involved. Sir Jack isn't fazed in the slightest. In fact, he insists that Asha just do as he says, no arguments. He wouldn't want them ending up in some sketchy place working for the wrong kind of people, especially not with Lee's already questionable luck. With a cheeky grin, he proudly declares that he's been a knight for over 20 years. 2 whole decades of upstanding employment, never once fired, demoted, or thrown out for bad behavior. If that doesn't scream credibility, what does? At his words, Asha's eyes suddenly fill with tears, and before she knows it, they start spilling over. Lee, understandably alarmed, immediately asks if she's in pain or if something's wrong. She's not in pain, not physically at least. It's just overwhelming, the way Sir Jack is showing them so much kindness. After everything, after all the stress, having someone who actually cares is enough to make her crack just a little. Sir Jack glances at the 2 young people in front of him, and for a moment, he wonders just how much Asha has been through. If something as simple as an offer of help is enough to bring her to tears. That thought sits nicely in his mind. a comforting confirmation that he's doing something good. But deep down, behind that confident front, he really has no idea what would happen if he got caught. He only told them otherwise to ease their worries. Truthfully, the thought of his fate being left to the mercy of Imperial Knights is bad enough, but if his wife Margaret were to find out? Now, that's real danger. For reasons he can't quite explain, he feels a strong, unshakable need to help these two. Maybe it's just the right thing to do. Maybe it's fate. Or maybe he's just an old knight who wants to make sure they don't walk straight into disaster. Either way, his hope now is that this small act of kindness keeps them safe from whatever trouble is waiting around the corner. Lee looks almost unrecognizable in proper clothes. Gone is the scruffy, rugged appearance. Now he walks into the kitchen with an air of complete nonchalance, unaware of the commotion he's causing. The maidens gape, the manservant actually pauses mid-task, and whispers ripple through the workforce. Apparently, their new coworker isn't just decent-looking. He's straight out of a nobleman's portrait. The master chef, however, is unfazed. He steps forward, clears his throat, and introduces Lee as a new servant, making it known that the young man is a friend of Asha's. He gives a stern yet fair warning to the kitchen staff. There will be no trouble, no hazing, and absolutely no nonsense. Lee is new to this kind of environment, having spent his life in seclusion up in the mountains, and the chef expects them to treat him well. Like it or not, this kitchen is Lee's new family now, and families don't throw punches. Unless it's dough. The workforce, caught somewhere between curiosity and fear of the chef's wrath, collectively shouts, "Yes, sir!" in perfect unison. Satisfied, the master chef turns to Lee and gestures for him to say hello, but they're greeted with silence. Lee just stands there. Asha, watching from the side, feels a familiar wave of panic. She had warned him repeatedly to watch his manners. Yet here he was, standing mute in front of his new colleagues, looking like some mysterious hero from a romance novel. With a casual but firm step, she walks up and discreetly pokes him in the ribs. Lee finally moves. He bows in respect to everyone present, and just like that, the tension shifts. The workers, clearly pleased with this display of humility, break into applause. Some nod approvingly, others smile, and just like that, he's officially one of them. Not wasting another second, the master chef claps his hands and orders everyone back to work. The kitchen comes alive again, the murmurs fade, and Lee, despite all the initial fuss, gets his first taste of life in the kitchen. Work begins without a moment's delay. Asha, ever the efficient teacher, drops a massive bowl of potatoes on the counter and rolls up her sleeves, ready to show Lee how to properly prepare vegetables. With effortless skill, she starts peeling, and Lee watches her with an intensity that could probably set the potatoes on fire. His focus is razor sharp. He's determined not to miss a single movement, as if this were some sacred technique only a chosen few could master. Once she's peeled a few, Asha turns to him expectantly and asks if he'd like to give it a shot. Lee nods, expression seriously giving off a, "I'd like to try" vibe. She hands him a small basket of potatoes, letting him know these are his to handle while she takes care of the rest. Lee accepts the task with the gravity of someone about to embark on a world-saving mission. Meanwhile, Asha makes quick work of her pile, finishing a mountain of potatoes in mere seconds. Lee, fully engrossed in his own task, looks up just in time to see the last potato skin flying off her knife. Our male lead blinks. Once, twice, he's stunned. Our guy could swear he didn't even see her hands moving. That's how fast she was. For a moment, he genuinely considers whether Asha might have superhuman abilities, but before he can ask, she enthusiastically offers to teach him how to handle all the other vegetables. That is until she glances at his basket and finds out he's still not done. Asha tilts her head, puzzled. Peeling potatoes is the easiest task in the kitchen, and yet here Lee is, carefully working through them like he's crafting fine art. She lets out a small sigh and decides to offer some speed tips. In the kitchen, it's not about perfection, it's about efficiency. After the potatoes, he's expected to move on to carrots and onions. Asha can't help but smirk at the thought of him dealing with onions. She teases, "Cutting onions might make you cry." Lee, ever the serious student, processes her words, nods, and affirms his commitment to the mission. "I'm on it." And with that, his vegetable journey continues. Asha launches into a full-on lecture about carrot preparation, explaining that it's a completely different approach from peeling potatoes. The techniques aren't the same, and carrots are used in a variety of dishes, so precision matters. Meanwhile, Lee peels and cuts with quiet determination, nodding every now and then to show he's following along. Once again, he affirms, "I got it." Our girl, however, is just getting started. She's on a mission. She declares that she's here to put him through everything. After mastering squash, he'll move on to peppers, then corn, then herbs. There's a whole syllabus, one she seems to have planned out in her head long before this moment. First, vegetables. Then it's fruit cutting. After that, dishwashing. It's a structured, well-thought-out curriculum, and Lee, whether he's ready or not, is enrolled. As she talks, without so much as pausing for breath, Lee keeps at his slow but steady potato peeling. The rhythm of Asha's voice is endless, an uninterrupted stream of culinary wisdom. It's almost hypnotic. Then a loud voice cuts through the kitchen. "Melts raspberries. Where are they?" Without even turning her head or skipping a beat, Asha casually flicks her gaze toward the voice, and as if programmed to know the exact coordinates of every single ingredient in the kitchen, points directly to the refrigerator. "The raspberries are in the middle section, second shelf from the top, behind the milk," she says, not missing a single beat in her ongoing lecture. With that handled, she turns right back to Lee, seamlessly continuing where she left off. She reminds him that they'll need to check the storage during lunch to see if they need to restock ingredients. And then she talks, and talks, and talks. Lee, at first focused, gradually finds himself drowning in her unrelenting stream of instructions. He's peeling potatoes, yes, but mentally he's sinking into a vast, confusing lake of kitchen terminology, storage plans, and future tasks. His mind drifts, eyes glazing over as he tries to process everything at once. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wonders, was peeling vegetables supposed to feel this overwhelming? After some time, Lee finally completes all the tasks he'd been assigned. He walks over to inform Asha, and she immediately acknowledges his efforts, offering a quick nod of appreciation before pointing him toward his next task. Lee can't believe just how efficient she is. Every move she makes is precise, seamless, and done with an almost supernatural level of skill. He watches her in action, utterly impressed as she executes her duties with a grace that leaves him speechless. How does she do this every day? And on top of that, still find time to visit him while he was recovering? For the first time, Lee sees Asha in a whole new light. She isn't just a hard worker, she's like a kitchen fairy, effortlessly weaving magic into every task she touches. Later that night, Lee lays in his quarters, completely drained of both color and strength. He has never felt exhaustion like this before. Just as he's beginning to question his life choices, a knock sounds at the door. He barely has the energy to lift his head, but then her voice comes through, asking if he's sleeping. Lee, despite being moments away from slipping into a coma just seconds ago, suddenly springs up in bed, full of energy, informs her to come in. She steps inside, only to immediately wave a hand in front of her face. The room is covered in a layer of dust so thick it could probably be harvested and sold. Asha frowns, coughing lightly. "No wonder," she mutters. "No one's used this room in ages." She's certain it'll take some serious effort to clean up. Without hesitation, she strides over to the window and throws it open, letting in fresh air. Lee, now noticing something in her hand, narrows his eyes. "What's that?" Asha holds up a piece of fabric and presents it to him. It's a nightgown. She figured his skin's still healing, so he might need something more comfortable to sleep in. Lee's eyes light up like a kid getting a present. His eyes right now are asking the question, "You brought something for me?" Before she can even finish her sentence, he snatches the fabric from her hands, excitement written all over his face. She'd wanted to say a few words, but it's too late. Too late. In a single swift motion, Lee yanks off the clothes he's wearing, completely ignoring Asha's attempt to explain something about the nightgown. Within seconds, he's already throwing it over himself, eager to test it out. Asha just sighs, shaking her head. Why is she even surprised at this point? At first, Lee eagerly slips into the nightgown, but something feels very off. The fabric is light, comfortable, but also oddly restrictive in some places. He frowns, glancing down in confusion. Asha takes one look at him and immediately points out the problem. Lee is wearing it backwards. He casually fixes it, turning it the right way around, expecting an improvement. But the moment he finally gets it on properly, he realizes this is not what he signed up for. The nightgown drapes over him in a way he didn't anticipate. It's soft, flowing, and, well, it's dramatically elegant. A gentle breeze from the open window makes the fabric flutter slightly, and suddenly Lee is standing there looking less like a battle-hardened man and more like a noblewoman about to sip tea in a luxurious palace. Asha's panic sets in immediately. She rushes to explain. Claims she'd asked them to give her the softest garments they had, and this is what they offered. Her words trail off as she fully takes in the sight before her. Lee, standing in the dimly lit room, bathed in moonlight, looking like some sort of ethereal princess. Asha shuts her eyes for a brief moment, trying to reset her brain. Maybe if she closes them for just a second, reality will correct itself. She opens them again. Nope, still a diva. And worse, Lee looks really hurt. Asha's panic deepens. She had just wanted him to be comfortable, not to shatter his dignity. Now she has no idea what to do. Asha panics the moment she sees Lee's expression. He looks absolutely heartbroken, devastated even. Oh no, he must hate the gown. Maybe it's too frilly, too delicate, too much like something her grandmother would wear? Before she can spiral further, he speaks, claims he loves it. Asha blinks. Did she hear that right? She studies his face, searching for any signs of sarcasm, but all she finds is sincerity. He's serious. Her brain stalls. He likes the lady's nightgown? Why? She blurts out before she can stop herself. Lee, with the softest, most heartfelt smile, looks down at the fabric and gently runs his fingers over it. Because it's soft and warm, and she gave it to him. Our female lead stares, her heart melted, her soul ascended. And when she spots the tips of his ears turning red, she nearly bursts. A big beaming smile spreads across her face, and suddenly, the whole world feels a little bit brighter. The night passes without incident, and so do the days. Weeks slip by, and Asha learns something unexpected. Lee is, in fact, absolutely terrible with his hands. Peeling a single basket of potatoes takes him weeks. Okay, maybe not literally, but it certainly feels like it. She forgets that at this point, she's practically a kitchen fairy, dicing onions with the speed of a seasoned chef while he struggles with what should be the simplest of tasks. The kitchen is a battlefield. Pans sizzle, flames roar, and the air is thick with the scent of spices and sweat. The maids and manservants work tirelessly, dodging hot oil splatters like trained warriors. And in the middle of it all is Lee, face drenched in sweat, but never once uttering a complaint. Asha has to respect the dedication, even if she does fear for his well-being. As she moves through her daily tasks, her gaze drifts toward him more often than she'd like to admit. Questions fill her mind. Is he okay? Is he struggling again? Will he break a plate if I turn my back for 5 seconds? The thought of him having some sort of tragic encounter with one of the other servants crosses her mind more than once. He's quiet, but who's to say someone won't pick on him? Or worse, what if he tries to multitask? She shakes her head. No, he wouldn't dare. Asha is so busy watching Lee that she doesn't notice the intense stare burning into the side of her face. The master chef, arms crossed and scowl in full force, is not amused. Asha! His voice booms through the kitchen like a thunderclap. She jumps so hard she nearly knocks over a pot. Yes, if you're going to daydream, do it somewhere that isn't next to an open flame. He gestures at the roaring stove. I'd rather not spend my afternoon putting out a fire, or worse, explaining to the Duke why one of his maids is extra crispy. Asha flinches. Right. Fire. Dangerous. Got it. She straightens up, nodding frantically, and gets back to work with laser focus. No more distractions for about 5 minutes. Orders start flying in, the kitchen turns into pure chaos, and then Tina strolls in, calling on our female lead. She whirls around. Her friend, who looks like she's about 5 seconds away from collapsing, clutches the doorway like it's the only thing keeping her upright. Please, she croaks. Laundry. She needs serious help. Asha blinks. Her friend wails. All of the other help's gone. Poof. Turns out the new hires didn't just leave. They fled. And the reason? Their boss, whom everyone calls a witch, has been running them into the ground on purpose, fully aware the staff is already short-handed. Asha's friend lets out a dramatic groan. I swear I'm gonna die from overwork. And if that happens, I'll never find someone to marry. It'll be her fault, that witch. Asha sighs and gently pats her friend's back, assuring her she's not alone. That's what friends are for. Her friend looks up, lip trembling, and then tears, actual tears. Tina appreciates our female lead and calls her the best. Our girl smiles, wiping a stray tear off her friend's cheek before rolling up her sleeves. Come on, let's get this done before you start writing a will. As the two head out, Asha throws one last glance toward Lee. He's at the sink, diligently scrubbing dishes, and oh? One of the manservants actually praises him? Huh? Guess peeling potatoes wasn't his only skill after all. Reassured that the kitchen won't explode in her absence, she finally steps outside. The ladies are outside now, hanging the laundry while the sun beats down on them. Tina, never one to let silence linger, starts up a conversation. So, how much longer does Lee have to stay wrapped up like a mummy? Asha folds a sheet and hums in thought. Not much longer. Tina's eyes sparkle with curiosity. So she wants to know what actually happened. She'd heard his house burn down, but what's the story really? She trails off, clearly fishing for more details. I really want to see what he actually looks like. Asha laughs, shaking her head as she clips a cloth in place. You and half the workforce. Tina crosses her arms, deep in thought. Well, I did notice his violet eyes. That's not exactly common. I just know he's super handsome under all those bandages. Asha snorts. He was. Then, realizing how that sounds, she quickly corrects herself. I mean, with the accident and all, he's probably covered in severe scars now. Don't get your hopes too high. Tina sighs dramatically. Well, that's a shame. Asha, glancing up at the sky, quietly hopes Lee recovers soon. But before she can dwell on it, Tina drops a bombshell. Okay, but more importantly, she asks what's going on between the two. Asha nearly drops the pillowcase in her hands. Her head lowers like someone just struck a chord deep in her soul. Tina squints, poking her side. Hello? Earth to Asha? Asha blinks a few times, snapping out of it, and clears her throat. What do you mean? Tina leans in, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. Oh, you know what I mean. You two are always together. It's raising eyebrows, serious eyebrows. Asha waves her off, huffing. It's not what you think. Tina narrows her eyes, clearly not convinced, but Asha ignores her and focuses on the laundry, acting like the conversation never happened. Back in the kitchen, two manservants casually walks up to Lee, one on both sides, and engage him in what's more or less an interview or even mockery too. The first guy claims our male lead will never get married if he stays so gloomy and quiet with zero social skills attached to his personality. Lee keeps at his duties, sparing no words in response. The other dude also takes a swing, stating that Asha is a hard worker, so he's certain she'll never have to worry about earning a living, but what he's only concerned for Lee, 'cause he feels someone else is gonna steal her from our male lead if Lee doesn't make a move. The guys laugh and laugh, but our male lead stays silent. Miss Sal asks the dudes to let Lee be, but the manservants don't let it go. One of the guys points out that Asha's at just the age to get married and settle down, but the man she brought over, he point to Lee, is such a downer. The manservants have no shame. They believe they've got every reason to be concerned. Miss Sal wasn't buying into their story. There are a lot of better things for them to worry about, and Lee shouldn't be anywhere near the top of that list. She calls them old-fashioned, and points out that Lee and Asha are simply close friends, so she'd appreciate it if they all mind their business. The manservant Tom still had lots more to say, and wouldn't shut up about Asha, and then Miss Sal lets out a deep sigh. She knows quite well that Tom would be far much more helpful if he didn't run his mouth so much. The manservant still didn't relax. He claims he's always been helpful, reason being that he spreads his wisdom here and there. I don't think this dude is so wise like he claims. So much talk, and in all this, Lee sticks to washing dishes and says absolutely nothing. The bell jingles, and it's Lord Benjamin calling on the servants. Everyone wonders what the Lord could possibly want at this hour, and Miss Sal wonders who to send up, since Asha isn't here at the moment. She takes a second to think on it and decides Lee should be the one to head up and see to Lord Benjamin's need. Our male lead doesn't object. He's here to serve after all. Lee takes majestic steps in the hallway as he heads for the Lord's chambers. As he moves closer, he perceives something very offensive, a familiar smell that brings back horrid memories from his not-so-far past. It's the smell of the drug that caused him so much pain, and it's coming from the Lord's chambers. Lee steps closer confidently, prepared to go full beast mode if need be, but he relaxes and tells himself it's got nothing to do with him anymore. Inside his chambers, Lord Benjamin stood facing the window as his door creaks open, and he welcomes Asha without turning around to see who's at the door. At the sight of the young manservant, the Lord is startled, but he keeps his composure and just manages to ask who Lee is with serious confusion written all over his face. Our male lead informs Lord Benjamin he's the new kitchen boy. Ben has heard about him, Asha's childhood friend. Our male lead affirms he is. Lord Benjamin wants to know if the new kitchen boy has known her for long, and Lee hesitates, but affirms he has for a while now. Our male lead is wondering why the Lord is asking him about Asha. Lord Benjamin steps closer, claims he'd heard Lee lost his home to a fire as if he cares. He stretches out his palm in an attempt to shake the new kitchen boy, as he apologizes for not saying hello sooner. With golden eyes and a majestic smile, he welcomes Lee to Laspitten Manor. The two young men face off, Lord Benjamin with a smile and his golden eyes, Lee with the violet eyes and what seems like rage boiling up in his gaze. Is it me, or did an unspoken competition just begin? Lord Benjamin stretches out a hand but is snubbed, and the two men face off in an awkward silence. Finally, Ben takes down his hand and assumes the new kitchen boy is just shy. With a casual smile, he states, if Lee is such good friends with Asha, then he strongly believes they'll get along pretty well too. Lord Ben hands over a book to our male lead. He politely requests Lee give it to Asha for him. He points out it's a book he bought he thought she'd enjoy. Lee's gaze deepens as he receives the book and steps out of the Lord's chambers. As the door shuts, Ben's gaze follows the new kitchen boy as he takes his leave. He recalls the look in Lee's eyes and immediately has a very strange feeling about our male lead. Lord Benjamin takes a seat and folds his arm, but the feeling remains gnawing at him, so he decides he'll do a background check on Lee, just to clear his curiosity. Out the door, our male lead strides towards Asha's location, and then suddenly pauses. He takes a look at the book in his hand, and thoughts flow freely in his heart. He's probably wondering what it means for the Lord to know what kind of book Asha likes. He must be questioning their relationship already. Later on in the day, Lee stands over the chimney fire waiting on Asha while his mind wanders for a bit. He remembers the smile on Lord Ben's face as he handed over the book, and our guy recalled how our female lead had laid so much emphasis on him being at his best behavior while on the job. She even reminded him how difficult it was to secure this job for him, so she expected nothing but the best from him, especially with Lord Benjamin. The emphasis on Lord Ben sparked something inside of Lee. He asked who Ben was, and our girl even corrected him to address Ben as Lord Benjamin. At the time she was introducing the Lord, a subtle blush appeared on her cheeks, and she claimed he has been good to her. Her reaction when talks of the Lord arose made our guy a little startled, almost enraged even. Tom's words from the kitchen earlier in the day too didn't really help matters. Tom had been like a messenger of doom, telling Lee he'd lose Asha if he didn't make a move soon enough. All of this made thoughts run wild, and Lee could even picture the Lord getting wedded to Asha and having a lovely ceremony. The thought made him so mad, his violet eyes lit up. Looking into the fire, his rage grew stronger, and finally he acts on it, flinging the book into the fire. The plans to claim it was a terrible accident. Lee watches on as the flames engulf the pages of the book. A new day dawns, and it's grocery shopping day. Asha takes Lee along with her today. Before leaving, she gives him a little brief on price ranges and educates him on the fact that he could get merchants to bring their prices down if he knew how best to communicate with them. She offers to practice a little of all she'd said at a stall close by, and our guy doesn't object. Asha speaks to the female merchant, Lori. Our girl asks why the lady's peaches are so bruised today. Lori didn't understand what Asha was saying because she was certain the peaches arrived just this morning. Our girl shows the female merchant visible bruises on the peach in her hand. Lori couldn't deny it, but she claims they're the most popular produce and reiterates that they really just came this morning, so she'd rather not sell than give Asha a discount. Our female lead unleashes her secret weapon, folding her hands, letting out the most sympathetic puppy eyes Lori has seen today, and informs the merchant she's the newest maid in the kitchen, so showing up without peaches would mean trouble for her. She turns her gaze to Lori and pleads with an almost angelic gaze. The female merchant groans and sweats trying to hold back, but her heart melts. Asha was just too sweet and too cute to deny. Lori let out a deep sigh before finally agreeing to sell at a subsidized price. She claims she can't go any lower because she still has to make a living too. Asha laughs a little and appreciates Lori for her kindness before paying for the peaches. Lee couldn't help but wonder what a marvelous young lady our female lead is. She really knows her way around. Our protagonists head off into the market to get other groceries on their list. As they stride forward, Asha points out that the merchant Lori has the biggest heart of all the fruit merchants, so she's certain to get a good deal. But still, it didn't mean she tried to slice down prices all the time, so her tricks are for occasional trips. It's almost like Lee's taking notes in his head. He assures her he's clear on all she's said thus far and proceeds to take the bag off her hands. She's reluctant to bother him, but our guy insists. Asha is worried because she feels it's heavy and she really doesn't want to stress him out, but Lee just grins and assures her he's got it covered. They run through their grocery list in no time, and our girl informs him they've got some time left to roam or pretty much do whatever they want. She asks his opinion after, of course, giving a few suggestions, and then our male lead takes a few seconds to think on it before something finally pops. Lee claims there's actually a spot he'd love them to visit. She's surprised he actually has somewhere he'd like to go, and she asks about it to clear her curiosity. Our protagonists arrive at a secluded location, out in the open field with trees around providing nice shade and the place giving a stunning view of the city. It's almost magical. Asha is short of words at the sight. It's beautiful. Words fail to express how wonderful the sight is to her. She wonders how he found a place this beautiful, and Lee informs her he's seen it in the passing and calls her master. He lays down the bag of groceries close to a tree, stretches out his hand to take hers, and takes off his jacket, lays it on the ground for her to sit. His gentleman behavior has her heart skipping beats and her cheeks red with emotions she couldn't make sense of. She manages a giggle and asks what he's planning to do here. Lee takes her hand gently and feelings flood her heart as she's so shy. Somehow, Asha's beginning to feel special. At the sight of him taking off his jacket to lay on the ground, she's startled and even tries to stop him, but he claims he doesn't mind if his jacket gets dirty, as long as she's the one getting to sit on it. Too sweet. Why am I feeling so bashful? I could definitely relate to how Asha is feeling right now. Our girl takes a seat right beside him under the shade, and she appreciates him for bringing her here. Asha and Lee enjoy the lovely view, taking it all in. It's so nice out, the sun setting, the building practically glowing, the air filled with life. It's all so amazing. As they enjoy the view, the wind blows our girl's hair in her face, covering her eyes. Without wasting time, Lee leaps into action, gently removing the strands of hair from her face. Now he's got his hands on her cheek, and she's got appreciation in her lips, but the whole situation is too perfect, too sweet, too romantic for her. Asha is blushing so hard right now, her eyes glued to his and his lips calling hers. Oh my, are they going to do it? Will they kiss? If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 3. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.